Welcome to Humanity Depends on It, Episode 1. My name's Adondra.
I'm Sammy.
I'm Bailey.
And our podcast is centered around some of the most controversial healthcare topics, abortion and vaccines. We are going to be exploring and different options on the topics and learn more about the different topics and their possible relation to the healthcare field.
So, how was y'all's Thanksgiving break?
It was pretty good. I did a lot of cooking.
That's good. Ate a lot of food, slept a lot, so it's always good to catch up on sleep and not have to do any work. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start us off. My topic is vaccines, and basically what I researched was whether or not they cause any form of developmental regression. So the first argument associated with this controversial topic is that mercury is found in vaccines. And when looking into this, I found that methylmercury, which is a form of mercury not found in vaccines, is a neurotoxin that is fatal if consumed in high amounts and can cause regression in some instances. However, like I said, that's not found in vaccines. It's actually ethylmercury, which is found in vaccines. And this is a form of like a preservative, and it kind of keeps the vaccines from growing any like bacteria or funguses that make them harmful to the subject that is getting them like itself. So that's where the main controversy comes with vaccines. And in order to get rid of this controversy, a substitution would obviously have to be found, but one is not readily available. Ethylmercury actually makes vaccines to where you can take them in short doses and they're excreted from the body very quickly. People often argue that these highly contested ingredients are what actually cause bad things in the subject that is getting the vaccines, but only trace amounts of these chemicals are found in approved vaccines. All approved vaccines are looked at by both the FDA, the CDC, and the World Health Organization, which means that they don't really possess any negative threat on your body. Formaldehyde is another chemical that is used in vaccines, and it's actually produced in higher levels by our body than is what's found in vaccines. So that's not really a cause of concern there. And another argument that people often like to make with vaccines is that the immune system of a baby cannot hold these. And basically, I went and did some research, and I found that actually a vaccine occupies around 0.1% of the baby's immune system, so it is rather safe and excreted quickly from the body, so it doesn't really have any time to have any real impact.
I have a child,
Mm-hmm.
and he's 3, and he's up to date on his vaccines, and I'm okay with it. I will say he had vaccines done like when he was 3 months and then like 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
and when he got them done when he was 6 months, he had like a crazy, insane fever.
Mm-hmm.
So like they had to give him the vaccines totally different going forward,
Yeah.
so he wouldn't like have a fever. I guess it was based on like the dosage amount.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would give him one, we would stay in the office, and they would wait like 45 minutes and then give him the other one. But I mean, I feel like just like any other human, you don't know like what type of reaction one person's gonna have. Everybody doesn't have food allergies, and some people do. And so I just feel like it should always be like a case by case basis. I don't think that everybody should be like, well, okay, nobody should get vaccines or everybody should get vaccines. But what I will say is that there's like when I was growing up, there wasn't a vaccine for chickenpox. Like there's a vaccine for chickenpox now. So just imagine you sending your child to school and they don't have vaccines. Okay, and then they give chickenpox to the teacher or somebody. A lot of kids have vaccines, but there's a few that don't. And I don't think it's okay to expose children that do have it or even adults that don't have those vaccines to a child that has not been vaccinated. That's just my personal opinion. And then when you mentioned mercury, I know that there's mercury in red, like tattoo ink.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a tattoo that has red ink. And I had the worst reaction to
Mm-hmm.
it. And I mean, I'm sure there's like different types of mercury, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm not saying that either one are related, but I will say the one that's in the red tattoo ink, like that was just on like the exterior of my body. So I
Yeah.
could only imagine the reaction that it would have if it was like injected inside of my bloodstream. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and talking about your kid, how he had that reaction, the CDC outlines that, some kids, like you said, you never really know how medicine is going to react in a child. So it's kind of expected that there is some kind of risk for reaction, but usually it's never to the case where it's gonna, provide that like regression in a kid's mind or anything.
I researched vaccines a little differently. I looked into how a lot of people refuse to get them based off of personal belief exemptions, and how there's also medical exemptions for people who have any sort of immune deficiency, such as a cancer or just an immunodeficient disease like Crohn's or something like that. They have different vaccines that they're able to get based on how their body will react to it. And a lot of people have started getting personal belief exemptions because they're afraid of the vaccines, because of the rumors that they cause autism, even though that's been debunked multiple times. And so I looked into how in California they recently passed a law that states that they have to get vaccines to be in like a public school. And when they did that, the vaccine rates rose like tremendously, but a lot more people were getting medical exemptions because doctors were starting to sign off on that because there wasn't any clear guidelines as to what qualified as medical exemption and what didn't. But by getting rid of the personal belief exemptions, a lot of cases of measles and stuff that were common in California have gone down, and it's just protecting the children in schools because that's where a lot of diseases are found, especially in children in schools, because they're playing with toys and they're not exactly the most hygiene friendly people.
Right.
So that really has helped in California. In places in New York where there's been large outbreaks of measles, it's needed so that the children and people that can't get vaccines for medical reasons are more protected.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have friends that are anti-vax that go to my school, and even with laws in place, I know they definitely help, but like I feel like it's kind of easy to like get around them, because like a lot of them use like religious reasons as like an excuse when he'll be free and willing to admit that there's no like religious reason that is hindering him from getting vaccines. It's just his family doesn't or want to take part in that. So yeah, I mean, I feel like they definitely help. It's just there's definitely ways to get around it.
Yeah, it's easy to get around the laws.
Well, do y'all remember earlier this year in Georgia where the CDC had, it was on the news, the CDC had mentioned that it was 4 people that died in Georgia in a specific area from the measles, and it was like young children, but they wouldn't like be specific on what side of town it was, the area, the city, or anything like that. Do y'all know?
Yeah, and I feel like that kind of goes along like the whole herd immunity principle, because like obviously all 4 of those kids were unvaccinated, and a lot of people, their reasoning like going into unvaccinating their kids is, oh, this so-and-so kid will be vaccinated, so my kid's protected because it's not going to come around here. But when instances like that happen, it's obviously not the case.
Right, especially if your child is the cause.
Yeah, exactly.
And for measles, it's so highly contagious that even if you are vaccinated, if you're around enough people that aren't and that have measles, you can still get it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And like for each one person that has measles, they're likely to give it to 18 others, just by how contagious it is.
That's crazy. All right, so Adondra, I know your topic was abortion.
Okay, so my topic is about abortion, and originally when I first began researching on this topic, I obviously was like, it's a woman's body, you can do whatever you want to do, like a full force feminist at that point, like you can do whatever you want to do with your body, nobody should ever be able to take that decision away from you. And I spoke about this topic because it was big in the news, because earlier this year there was a bill that was signed, and it was called the Heartbeat Bill, that basically stated that you could not receive an abortion after 6 weeks because at 6 weeks the fetus has a heartbeat. And it was interesting for me to research because after like getting professional opinions and like reading so many sources, doctors stated that it was kind of, I guess, wrong to even say that it's a heartbeat because it's almost just like a vibration. It's not a heartbeat yet, and that the heart isn't even formed at 6 weeks. And even interesting enough, me being a woman and me having a child, I was 18 weeks before I found out I was pregnant. And that's all because as a woman, you usually depend on your cycle to go missing, and then you know, okay, well, something's not right. I need to get checked up. And that wasn't the case for me. And so when I went to the doctor, I found out that I was pregnant, and I found out that I was having a boy all in one day. And so I just didn't think that 6 weeks was a fair amount of time if a woman even decides to do that. Now I know that they have like stipulations where it stated, well, if you were raped or something of that nature, then and you filed a police report, you would have the option to have an abortion. But even still, regardless of the case, I feel like that it's not fair for that to even happen. Now I do know that a federal judge has temporarily blocked the Georgia's heartbeat bill, the pro-life legislation that would prohibit abortion after fetal heartbeat can be detected. So that means that the law still stands as what it is, which is you can get an abortion in the state of Georgia up to 20 weeks. I do know that in other states you can get it up to 24 weeks.
And as far as the whole deal where you said you were 18 weeks and you didn't find out until then,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's tough there because there's like a fine line, like whether or not the couple wants to have a kid or not.
Right.
Like obviously in your case you were fine with it, but think about a couple that maybe isn't suitable to bring a child in this world. They might not have like the financial means, or they just like solely weren't planning on it. I feel like it's really tough there to like
Mm-hmm.
make a law to where they can't have that option to abort if they decide to.
Right.
I agree that it should be like allowed for, especially for the people who are not wanting a kid. I think there's a time in the development where it's just too far along to have the option to abort, because at like 20 weeks where it is now as the law stands, I think that's a good like place for it, because at that point most women would have found out that they are pregnant and they would have had the ability and the option to abort the child. But past 20 weeks, the child is so far developed that it would become harder to abort it.
And I even agree with that as well. And just from a personal standpoint, I don't think that anyone should be able to get an abortion after they're at least 12 weeks, just because of the actual photos and videos that I've seen in reference to it. I just don't believe in that.
And that is going to end episode 1 of Humanity Depends on It. In the next episode, we're just going to be having like a basic open conversation about each other's general opinion about our topics, and just kind of the common misconceptions and the stats and reasoning behind our beliefs.